to Open Mic. I'm Mr. Douglas. We got a special show for you today. On the line, we've got Smashing Pumpkins frontman Billy Corgan, who's currently on tour with the band, kind of a new incarnation of the group. Now, it's been 25 years since the Smashing Pumpkins formed. Looking back, Billy, did you expect this type of path?
No, because you can never account for A, the mind and mood of the public, and B, I could have never accounted for the changes in technology. I mean, the technology component is mind-blowing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And the ability to reach people.
Yeah, but there's a funny thing, though. It's like there's a great mythology around what technology has done, but it hasn't necessarily worked out to a musical benefit, you know? It's brought a lot of people into the game, some deservedly and some not so. But it's just kind of like, excuse my French, it's a total cluster of what success is anymore. There's no it used to be charts and sales, and now there's almost no way to measure success. I mean, you have one band that sells records and can't sell any tickets. You have one band that can sell tickets and can't sell any records, and it's just, it's pretty. At least in our case, we're kind of in a decent middle, where we can sell both records and tickets. Maybe not as much as I would like, but certainly in a way that keeps the business going and keeps the artistic brand integral without having with very minimal compromise, which is really at this point very satisfying.
Well, and obviously you've built a fan base over the years, so you're able to. You don't have to try to build it at this point in this environment.
So I would disagree with. We've actually lost a lot of our old fans because we refuse to be kind of a reunion greatest hits type of band. And what's actually happened, which has been difficult but really rewarding, is we've built a new younger fan base, and the younger fan base, through their enthusiasm and of course technology, is actually, it's a little bit like flies to honey. Some of the older fans are now coming back around that have had no interest because they see something happening, and of course it's attractive that anybody whenever there's something going on, it's the car crash effect. People just start to slow down and pay a different attention.
Well, the new record, it's one of those ones that you listen to over and over again, and as you listen to it, it just keeps gaining power, which, as you know, is kind of always the sign of a timeless record, as opposed to one that's just kind of here and gone. But it is part of the bigger picture with the Tiergarten project, which, I don't know, that's arguably one of the more intense concept ideas that I can think of. So talk about putting together an album that isn't just a dozen songs on a CD, but it's more complex. There's more to it.
Yeah, I wanted to. The reason I was attracted to the idea of the project is I wanted to show an artistic progression in sequence. It hasn't necessarily worked out exactly how I would have hoped, but I think it's given people a sense that there was a journey. If I just gone away for 2 years and worked really hard, made a really good album, I don't think it's the same as being willing to kind of put some stuff out, warts and all, for which we were in many quarters highly criticized, because in essence we weren't playing the game of scrubbed up Pro Tools perfection. All I was trying to do was get back to making music that I felt really good about, and in my eyes didn't have any compromise in it, and that actually led to the making better decisions on an album like Tiergarten, as opposed to working from a place of fear and thinking if we don't make a really good album, it was more just about rebuilding kind of the internal integrity of the band so that the band could make an album like Oceania.
We're always, experimenting and doing things that would kind of be considered against the grain because, other bands are doing it. Whether it's making this concept idea or, releasing an album for free online back when, at a time when downloading was like the hot button issue. Talk about your thought process when it comes to writing and releasing albums, because it seems like it's always been about you and the fans, and not so much about, like what you said earlier, it's hard to gauge success with record sales and stuff. It seems like you just kind of concentrate on the music and the fans.
Yeah, well, I've had really intense experiences in my life where I've made albums I really believe in, and one becomes this massive, crazy worldwide success, and one I'm vilified for, and I felt just as strongly about both albums. And then over time, Now we're, with The Door, it's been 14 years, and Melancholy, it's been 18 years or whatever. Um, you see where the musical component evens itself out, and now both albums are respected equally, which is pretty funny to have had that experience. So once you've had those experiences in public, you learn that ultimately the only thing you can really count on is the way that you feel about the music. And as long as you feel passionate about the music, the other stuff seems to work itself out. Fans are trendy like anybody else. You see people wearing bad clothes and funny hats. I mean, fans are trendy. They get into weird mindsets that certain music is passe. One day rock guitar's in, one day it's out. For the past 5 years, we've had a bunch of people wheedling around sounding like they're all on wire and, you know, minimalism keyboards and, blah, blah, blah. Everybody, said now suddenly big guitars are back again. You know what I mean?
Would you consider yourself always in writing mode?
No, not so much anymore. I guess I'm always maybe in reconnaissance mode. I'm always thinking and preparing. Um, but less writing mode because I reached a point where I was just getting burned out, and I felt that maybe even though I thought the songs were good, they didn't have this sort of the sparkle that a great song needs. A great song really requires a level of intense dedication, and sometimes it's just as much in the preparation for the moment as it is what happens once you write the song. You have to be in the right mind space, and if you're writing a lot of songs, sometimes you just get some of the really good ones get lost in the shuffle, and I've just kind of backed off of that a bit, and just sort of, it's more just trusting myself in the moment rather than feeling like I have to write 100 songs to get 10 good ones.
In case you're just joining us, we're talking to Smashing Pumpkins frontman Billy Corgan. Well, the one thing on this new record that really jumped out right away because it's really prevalent in the first three songs, Quasar and Panopticon and the Celestials, is the bass riffs. I mean, they're just right there in your face. Now, was that you or Nicole in the studio writing those riffs?
So Nicole plays everything on the album. It's the first time anybody's played bass on the albums. I mean, I'm not saying I played every song on every album, but basically I was the bass player on all the albums. So, Nicole's the first bassist I've ever worked with where she is the bassist for the album, and it's obviously the band. So now she's such a major contributor. I'm such a thrilled to work with her.
Elaborate on that a little more about her, what she's brought to the record. Like I said, I mean they're really impressive, almost hypnotic bass lines, and you don't find that everywhere.
Yeah, she's interesting in that she has no musical training, kind of like myself. Does everything just on what she hears. Doesn't even know scales, anything. So it's all intuitive based playing. And she's really beautifully melodic in a way that's different than the way I hear melody. So it's interesting as a composer to hand her something and have her come up with melodies that are counterpunctual, almost in a Baroque way, but yet they sound like they're from a different mind source as opposed to me writing counterpunctual melodies, which sound like they come from one mind. And I think that really is added to the depth and dimension of the song. So I'm really proud to work with her.
This is truly your band, and it does have the name to it. It does have a long history, but obviously it's your band. Now, talk about the pride you have in Smashing Pumpkins as a band and making sure that it's always up to your standards.
That's an interesting question. There's obviously a lot of, I don't know what the good word would be. The fur flies when you talk about the old band for a variety of reasons. There's a lot of different opinions. What I do feel loyal to is that we created a particular vision together for what Smashing Pumpkins represented, in opposition or in relation to a known music world, which in the late '80s was sort of pretty predictable. And I feel responsible to continue on that legacy of artistic contrition or innovation, because I see that's the core strength of what makes the band unique. And that's why it's at this point I say to press, you can. It's almost like a football game with Pumpkins. You can discuss a lot of the X's and O's, and maybe you should have run this play, and wouldn't it be better if so and so was on the team? But at the end of the day, it's more about the franchise and what the franchise represents. It's like we play a certain brand of football, and I'm really proud that I'm still carrying that on. And I ask that of the band members, and I ask that of anybody who works with us, that the legacy of the band's sort of artistic meaning is upheld more so than what do we need to do to sell a record or get somebody in a seat. And I'm really proud of that, because I think at the end of the day, that's where the band's real legend lies, not in a song or a one album.
Well, the other interesting aspect to that is that some bands can pull that off and some can't. Like you look at Megadeth, and that's Dave Mustaine's band. He's always got different parts, but nobody looks at Megadeth and says, well, that's not Megadeth because so and so's not in it. Same thing with Smashing Pumpkins. But if you look at another band, let's say Chris Cornell decided to do Soundgarden by himself and call it Soundgarden, it might just be a little weird, or Vince Neil
Well,
tours as
I
Motley
do
Crue.
I do get that, though. I do get people where they don't want to sort of acknowledge it, and actually, I'm kind of okay with that, because some people, their attachment to a band is, an image. Some people's attachment is they like the way a certain group of musicians play. Like I like Deep Purple version 2. So I get it. I'm okay with it. But I also like Deep Purple with David Coverdale. So I just look at it like, people become fans of the era. If they want to be fans of one era and not another era, that's okay. My job is to continue to write really high-level songs and produce them in a way that puts the band always in a contemporary frame of reference. As long as I do that, I think we're totally fine. And we'll go up and down just like any other business does. The key is that we're still in business. That's the way I look at it. How many artistic franchises are worth anything after 20 years in a contemporary way? I mean, there's plenty that are worth something in a sentimental way, which is at some point like Blood from the Stone. But the fact that the band remains a credible artistic enterprise at this point, I mean, I think that's pretty incredible, considering that it's not like easy listening, easy get on the radio. I mean, we're basically a prog band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you're talking about Panopticon. I mean, there's a lot of prog in that song. That's not just simply like a K-rock song.
Yeah. But it still fits. You can still hear that on the radio, and it's still a rockin' tune.
Well, yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah. My wife and I, we caught your show in 2000 in Boulder, and I remember it was like being the farewell tour of sorts, and then obviously you came back as strong as ever. Talk about your approach to this band today compared to that time when you were at the time temporary closing the book on the thing.
Well, then it was very much about how to try to exit gracefully, in my mind, which was very difficult because the relationships in the band were so broken down. And at that point, just like almost like a bad marriage, it's like it becomes about the bad marriage more than it becomes about whether or not you can enjoy a meal together. So my mindset then was just like, how do we bring this to a close with some dignity, which I tried and still wasn't totally capable of doing. Bringing it back was more about, can we pick back up the artistic mantle and carry that forward, irregardless of who's in the group. And I think that's sort of like the difference between Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Chapter 1 was like a story that could have only played out that way because of the personalities involved. Chapter 2 is more about me asserting an artistic integrity upon the operation, and basically finding those people who can be consistent in that and are dedicated to that. It's like Walt Disney's been dead since 1966, but there are people who carry on the Disney legacy because they believe in it. You know what I mean? Right. And I'm not saying I'm so grandiose that I want the Pumpkins to continue after I die, but I'd like to think that the inherent vision of the band from an integrity point of view can consistently move forward into a different era, and that's the point that I've tried to make. People focus on it more on a material sense, which is like based on what they already understand in business. Yet everywhere we look in the music business, we see successful businesses going forward without original members. I mean, the biggest touring act of 2011 was Journey with a singer they found on YouTube from the Philippines. And I was a fan of Journey in the 80s. I bought the records. When I worked with Roy Thomas Baker, who had worked on early Journey albums, I asked him about working with Journey. My point is there's a lot of people out there who are just fans of the band or the music or the feeling that you get from the songs. Why should those people be disenfranchised from participating in it in a modern era if that's what the band wants? So my point is we're all having to kind of evolve into a new consciousness because a lot of this music is lasting in many ways much longer than previous generations' music lasted because of technology or because of a new form of sentimentalism that's never been seen before.
My name is Mr. Douglas, inviting you to join us next Tuesday at 1:30 for Open Mic, our weekly program featuring local and not so local artists. If you'd like to be a guest on Open Mic, send us an email at kgpr@msugf.edu, or you may call us at 268-3739. Thank you for listening and supporting Montana Public Radio, 89.9 FM, KGPR, Great Falls.